So I'm just going to go over a couple quick team building points, and then I'm going to go over the team building process for competitive Pokemon. First point is use good Pokemon. Yes, this is rather subjective, and some Pokemon will be really good on one team and bad on another, but it's worth saying anyway. A lot of people, when starting competitive, use mediocre Pokemon or Pokemon that are great in-game, but not necessarily good against other humans. I'm sorry, but you're going to have to put the Butterfree on the shelf for a little bit here, guys. If you're looking for an idea of what constitutes a good Pokemon, Pokemon Online and Smogon University both generally have usage stats that I'll probably link up somewhere. They can check out to see which Pokemon are the most used. Okay, point number 2 is have a plan for each Pokemon. In order to win, each of your Pokemon has to be more useful to you than your opponents are to your opponent, if that makes any sense. To that end, your Pokemon should have a particular job to do, and they should do it well, instead of trying to have each Pokemon do everything. For example, if you want a Pokemon to attack, make sure it has either high special attack or high physical attack, and that it has moves that correspond to that stat. Since such a Pokemon will probably last longer if it can outspeed and when it KO the opposing Pokemon, it's a good idea to focus on speed as well. However, if you want bulky Pokemon that can sit and take hits, you want to give it a moveset that can deal with aggressive Pokemon that are threatening to KO it, that doesn't necessarily rely on its attacking stats since it's probably focusing on the defenses. There are some exceptions, of course, but Pokemon that have attack EVs that are defensive Pokemon or offensive Pokemon that have defense EVs are generally like that for a very specific reason. For example, Flamethrower on Blissey isn't there because Blissey can sweep the opposing team with Flamethrower, but because Pokemon like Scizor and Ferrothorn are normally excellent switch-ins on Blissey, and Flamethrower can scare them away. Point number 3, make good use of each move slot. I'll subdivide this a little further and first say that have good coverage. One thing that people do coming from cartridge games is that they put 2 attacks of the same move type. For instance, they'll have Blastoids with both Surf and Hydro Pump. This is usually a bad idea, since in any given situation, one of them is better than the other, and you're essentially wasting the move slot dedicated to the worse option. There are plenty of alternatives for almost all Pokemon, like, for instance, that Hydro Pump could instead be Hidden Power Electric. Second part is non-attacking moves are good. Quick example, if I Swords Dance once, then attack, I deal the same amount of damage that I would have done had I just attacked twice in a row. All subsequent attacks will be twice as powerful. Let's say you're faster, and I boost my speed somehow, so that suddenly I'm faster than you. Basically, I've lost nothing, because the turn I spent boosting my speed is made up for the fact that I went from being slower than you to being faster than you. If the next Pokemon you send out is also slower than me, I've effectively gained a turn. If I burn or paralyze your physical sweeper, that physical sweeper can no longer do its job. If it's burn, its attack is halved. If it's paralyzed, it can no longer outspeed. And one special point is Stealth Rocks. One of the most powerful moves in the game. If I can get Stealth Rocks out on turn 1, and all of your Pokemon take Stealth Rocks damage, that's a huge health advantage that my team has. Because of the importance of these non-attacking moves, moves that counter non-attacking moves like Taunt, Substitute, and Whirlwind are all incredibly powerful. Use all of these to your advantage. Metagame awareness. You should be able to handle all the common Pokemon that you will face. Whether you build a team for Wi-Fi overused, or 4th generation underused, or just to beat that kid next door or whatever, you should have an idea about which Pokemon are being played, which Pokemon you will be facing. As stated previously, competitive organization release usage statistics, so you can see exactly what's popular if you're in one of those formats. If you're playing the kid next door, you're going to have to spy on them yourself, though. So go through the list of Pokemon you're likely to be facing, from most common to least common, and ask yourself, what can I do against you? Ideally, you should have multiple Pokemon that can safely switch in on any move in that Pokemon's moveset. This is really nice, but it almost never happens. Having a hard counter to even the top 50 Pokemon is a real challenge in 4th and 5th generation. More likely, you'll need to have not a Pokemon that can switch in and force the other Pokemon to switch out, but something that can at least prevent that single Pokemon from sweeping your entire team, i.e., once that single Pokemon that you're having trouble with faints one of your Pokemon, you can send out another Pokemon and revenge kill. Just one note on evaluating threatening Pokemon. A lot of people are really, really optimistic, like, oh, I can counter their Blaziken with my Swampert. This maybe, but you have to consider all the possibilities. Let's say that Blaziken is in a Sun team and has Solar Beam or Hidden Power Grass. Your Swampert isn't going to be very happy. Do you think your Magnezone can counter their Gyarados? What happens if their Gyarados is running Dragon Dance and Earthquake? You're in trouble. Unpleasant situations like this happen quite often, and as unpleasant as it is to try to think of a million counters for something like that during the team-building process, it's infinitely easier than to improvise when you're actually facing it in a battle. Be able to switch into specific moves. There are a lot of types out there, and now with the newer generations, they come in both physical and special varieties. You should be able to take all of them with one Pokemon or another. It's not about typing either. Blissey has amazing special defense and can resist pretty much every single special move there is. For the most part, it can even resist special fighting moves, which are super effective just because it has really, really good special defense. Also, take into consideration non-attacking moves. What will you do if you know your opponent is going to use Spore? What about Toxic or Thunder Wave? What if you know they're going to use Stealth Rocks? You should have a plan to switch in a Pokemon for all of these moves. Be able to take down the best teams in the metagame. This one takes a bit of experience to put into effect, but basically in any given environment, specific teams tend to emerge that do very well. 2nd generation. Stall teams were really, really great. In 3rd generation, Stall was still pretty powerful, and Baton Pass was incredibly powerful. In 4th generation, hyper-offensive teams that had 6 attacking Pokemon were really strong, and in 5th gen, weather is the king. In 5th gen, for example, if you can build a team that can win against sand teams, rain teams, and sun teams, you're probably going to win a large percentage of battles.